Welcome! In this video we're going to be taking a look at the recently announced patch notes for version 2.4.0. This was something that was announced recently and should be coming into play by next week, most likely around the 18th or 19th. One of the new things that they're going to be adding this is 3 new Elunes. We do not have much information about it as they only provide some of the pictures of them. The first one is Crucio. We're not sure much about him, but he does look interesting and could have a very interesting kit on him. Should be interesting to see how he plays out. The next one that they're introducing is one called May. She is a very interesting, again, looking Elune and is most likely going to be a support or healer just based on the way she looks, whereas the first one most likely will be an attacker or a debuffer. Could potentially be a tank on the first one. This one is Reaper. This one looks very interesting and also very aggressive. This one looks like it is most likely going to be a DPS or some type of debuffer. The character design and the different costumes that they have as you go up through their stages of 4, 5, and 6 star grades look very nice and very detailed. This one to me looks like a combination of Seraphine based on the claw, but maybe a stronger version of Seraphine. Kind of like a mix of Seraphine and Nyx. Could be interesting. When it comes out, it looks like they're going to be doing another step up summon, which is good. So if you don't have if you have the Artemil and the Elucia currently, start saving up those rubies so that you can use this, as some of the bonuses just that they're showing here in this screenshot should be quite good. Giving you legendary skill books, the step 7 one, which costs 300 rubies to do this, also gives you a 10+1 summon for a regular summon, which is essentially like another free 300 rubies, which is very nice. The 10 altar stones is very useful for doing the dimension slate. The 10 class seeds is very helpful if you get any of these to do it. As you can see on this one, the Reaper is a legendary and the DPS badge, meaning the Reaper will be a DPS. So most likely the other one's going to be either a debuffer or a tank, as they will probably not release 2 DPSs for the same. This one also gives you a 4-star Reaper summon at the very end if you go through all 10 steps, costing 3,000 rubies. So start saving up those rubies so that you can do that. This update will also bring out a new Christmas season event. This will start on the 16th. As noted here, it starts on December 16th and will run through December 29th. This event looks like it will have some decent things, but very typical, as it'll give a lobby, a costume, and then different seeds. My guess is that we'll also be giving other things that help in Dimension Slate. The background looks very nice, quite cute. This is going to be the Underground Arena, is going to be in beta, and they will be using this. It's not really much information about it yet, but it looks like it could be a very interesting PvP type situation. We'll have to get into that more once this comes out and we can go over some of the rules and what it's going to be. They're changing the air battle times and for the seasons, as they'll be cutting it back and adding this onto the weekends, and the air battles will be a weekday thing for those events. They're changing the way the title system works, making it a little bit better and adding more uniqueness to it, meaning that as you gain more titles, you can get more effects to show that off on your profile. They will be adding a new Lumen dimension of adventure to it, so they will be adding another event to it to add a new storyline. They will be doing a cheer race similar to the one that they're doing now with the Elucia and Artemil, so that you can get more rewards. Something to do on the event races, even if you're doing them now, is find the one that you want if you're going for a certain placement on that one, and focus all onto that one and put 1 point into the other one. by putting one single point into the other one, you're guaranteed to at least get the rewards of that one too. You're not going to get a big reward from it, but you will get some rewards from it, making you able to get even more rewards. Something to do, as it does help the amount of rewards you get from the events. And then you can put the rest of your points, except for that one, into the one that you're going for if you're going for a certain placement. This patch will also be bringing out their 5th balance patch. This one will be targeting the Elunes Rachel, Avita, and Guyan, which is going to make them even better than they are. As they are already pretty decent, their main goal of the Rachel one was they were going for a increased team survivability as well as damage output from her, which was decent because she had the ability to do decent damage. So looking at the changes that they're planning to make on the previous version of her special skill, this one currently during the channeling it reduces the damage that she receives by 10% and then distributes all the damage evenly among anybody on her row, making it so AoE attacks still do the same amount of damage to everybody, but a single target attack is distributed to everybody, making it for those single target nukers harder to kill a single target. This will last for 2 turns. I believe when it is leveled up it goes to a 3-turn duration. The thing that they're changing on it is most of it stays the same, except that it will now provoke the target that she picks whenever she starts the channeling. As you select a target when you first use this, it will provoke that one target onto her, meaning that she can target someone on the front row to provoke them onto her. The second skill that they're going to be changing is her ultimate skill. This is just changing a few minor details of it, but that will have a big impact. The way it currently is, this will deal additional damage equal to 20% of the enemy's current HP, meaning that as you kill the enemy down, especially in boss fights, their current HP gets lower and lower, meaning the damage that this deals additionally is reduced. The damage does not exceed 200% of her attack. The way they're changing this is that it will start dealing 20% of the enemy's max HP and no longer dependent on their current HP, which means it will deal the same damage the entire time, no matter what the current HP of the enemy is at. This is especially helpful for bosses, as it can do good damage at the beginning and it will continue doing that good damage. The other thing that they're changing is that the boss damage will not exceed 200% of her attack, which is good, meaning that it's not going to be overpowered, but it will now do 20% of the max HP as additional damage to the regular PvP Elunes that you're fighting, the players or other just mobs. This makes her a decent damage dealer for dealing with that, except for the bosses who have super high HP. This can make her somewhat of a decent damage dealer for dealing some damage if you're using her as a tank for doing the Chaos Tower, as she can do decent HP to them because in the hard mode they do have a significant amount of HP. The last thing that they're going to be changing on her is her first passive. The way it is right now is reduces damage by 20% for all allies deployed on the same row as her except for herself. They're changing this to a 40% damage reduction for all allies deployed on the same row as her. This makes her especially useful for keeping your allies alive. One thing that you could do if you want to be especially annoying to something is to put a tank in the front row and then put her on the back row as a secondary tank for your team in an air battle, making all of your DPS and support take 40% less damage, and then whenever she uses her special skill, that damage, the single target damage, is reduced even more as it spreads it out, making them only take 25% of any single target damage. This will make it especially difficult to deal with those back rows, as that they will have the massive damage reduction that they take, meaning that the enemy will be forced to using AoEs or something else to snipe them out, such as a Kongrim, by first taking out the tank and then the back row. But this gives your team a chance of killing them first. This is a very significant buff as it reduces the damage by quite a lot. Looking over at the next one that they're doing is Alvida, who is another legendary, but is also a decent one. She was already decent for debuffs. The direction that they were going with this one and what their goal was to change the passive to make it for faster debuffing ability, which is what they did. Currently, her first passive increases her attack by 5% for each weaken effect on all enemies. The way they changed this is all they did was added that it'll boost her crit rate by 5% for all the weakening effects on the enemies. Meaning that if she applies 2 different weakening effects through her different skills to the enemy as an AoE, and there are 5 enemies on the team, then that's 5% for each one, making it 2 for 10% per enemy if she lands both, and on 5 enemies on the enemy team, then that's 5 plus the 10%, making that 50%, giving her a very decent crit rate. The second passive that they changed is her passive 2, and that one is went from an ignore weaken resistance when attacking an enemy below 50% HP and prevented them from gaining weaken tolerance. The way they changed this is that it will now affect any enemy over 50% HP, which actually makes her better, in my opinion, because now she is able to be used as a first turn debuffer to slow down and weaken the attack of the team, and ignores the weakening tolerance of them since they're at high HP. This means at the very beginning it will ignore any weakening tolerance effects and will hurt them down at the very beginning of the fight and not later on in the fight when they're almost dead. This ignores the weakening resistance of them too, as it is very good. This means that you can make her on a very fast build and use her to debuff the enemy team, weakening their attack by a significant amount on turn 1. This can be very useful for her for dealing in PvP situations, as it'll make the enemy team do almost no damage to you, and it doesn't matter what they're running as it ignores the weakening resist. So running a Trent, which increases the resistance rate of the enemies, this will ignore that weakening resist and not allow them to gain tolerance effects to weakening effects right at the beginning. The only problem is if you're using her against a Trent, the Trent can just cleanse that all off when he moves. So it is something to still keep in mind depending on who you're facing, such as a Trent or a Leskar. The last one that they affected is they did do a balance change to an epic, Guyan, which is a recent one, Elune that I did give a quick look at. Guyan was already a decent support Elune, but they changed him to make him even better, which is very nice to see. The way they did, on his special skill, which is the one that did a rune effect, this one did the rune effect for 2 turns, which went up to 5 turns when it was max leveled. They now changed it to do 2 random rune effects instead of just 1, meaning that there are only 3 different rune effects that it can do. This one now does 2 of them, which is very nice. To get 2 rune effects before, you had to hope for the 50% chance on one of his passives to do that. Now you're going to get them all the time. The other thing that they changed was on his passive 1. The passive 1 went from an increased attack by 3% for each rune effect that an ally has. Now it will gain an additional 10% HP for each rune effect that he applies to an ally, up to 50%, making him tankier and harder to deal with. This is especially useful as he does have an AoE that gives a rune effect to your entire team. This means that as he does his rune effects and his buffs, it makes him even tankier and better as a support. His second passive, the thing that they changed also after using his bestow rune, which is his second skill, this one had a 50% chance of using it again a second time on that same target, meaning that you had a chance of applying 2 rune effects to that target. As the special skill now does 2 random rune effects all the time, this makes this part of the skill not so useful, but they did change it. Now, when you use the bestow rune, you still have a 50% chance of doing it an additional time, but now it will do it on a different ally, meaning that now you can have 2 allies with 2 rune effects instead of just 1 with 2 with a 50% chance. Now you have an additional chance to do that, meaning that if you proc this on the first turn and you're applying this, that gives you 4 rune effects, meaning that he gets a 40% bonus HP because of his other passive on turn 1. This makes him very good as a support or as an additional support for your team or early game support, as he will be able to apply those rune effects very quickly. And if you level up the special skill, which I recommend for him, that goes up to a 5-turn duration for those rune effects, meaning that he can keep those runes on everybody all the time. The 8th thing that they're going to be doing here is that they will be changing some of the shop and the shop items updates. They will be selling keystones, boost stones, and altar stones in the shop, as they currently do not, and they will take rubies. Not something, unless you're spending a lot or have a lot of excess rubies around, something that you're going to want to be doing. But it is an option to get more of these to boost up your dimension slate. They will also have underground arena tickets in there that purchase to do the new underground arena. They're adjusting the price and the quantity of the permastones in the enhanced shop, and they're also doing the class seed summon price will be adjusted in the air battle shop, hopefully making them cheaper. The air battle shop will now sell keystones and boost stones, so that is something that's going to be nice there, as that during the air battles can give you those too. The 10+1 premium summon price will be adjusted in the Elune point shop, meaning that if you're spending money on the game, you'll have those Elune points so that you can get the 10+1 premium summon also at most likely a cheaper price. The point shop will also sell the keystones and altar stones, meaning that you'll be able to get those with those Elune points. They will be adding a new arena shop will be added, which I'm guessing is going to be the underground arena shop. They'll be doing a Christmas Medina shop, most likely similar to the way they did the Black Friday ones, meaning that you'll have good items on that, so look out for that and save up some of those resources. They'll be resetting the select summon to, they're saying that the new one's going to be Alvida, Majed, Karu, Trent, Rachel. Which I'm pretty sure those are the current ones, but they could be different. I'm pretty sure it is Trent, Rachel, Alvida, and Majed already, and I think Karu is the other one, so I don't think they're changing it in that respect. I think they're just going to be resetting it, hopefully with 5 new ones if people use that. This the 11th thing that they're doing is the announcement for the air battle schedule changing. Basically, instead of going for an entire week, it's going to be a Monday through Friday event, and the underground arena will be taking place on the weekends. The 12th thing, they're adding Christmas costumes to Lilith and Karu, making them quite cute little Christmas costumes to get for them, especially if you use those Elune. Other improvements, which is something that is always nice. The first one is something that I do like. It's that you can now dye and do the dyeing on the 5 and 6 star costumes, as well as any of the purchase costumes that you get, either through spending the 300 rubies or through other cash shopping methods. This is nice, as some of the costumes look better anyway, and would be nice to be able to dye them, especially some of the purchased ones. The visual display of the fusion points will be improved, so we'll have to see how that looks. Various visual improvements on the dimension slate. We'll have to see how those look. Hopefully they'll look nice. Most likely they will. They're changing the amount of Elune seeds needed to graft the level 85 gears down to 1200, which is decent improvement, making them a little bit cheaper to do. They said that they're changing or improving the main Elune setting display, so that'll be interesting, most likely to match up with those titles, the way they're going to be doing the titles for it. The dimension slate stats of the epic Elunes has been significantly buffed to match the dimension slate stats of the legendary Elunes, given that the slate grade is the same, meaning that if the slot that they're talking about, it sounds like if the slot is both, say, a blue or a purple, the purple being like the epic grade or something, or a yellow, if you get up to a yellow one on the epic one, then that means that stat will be the same for an epic Elune as it is for a current legendary Elune. As of right now, it's much lower for the epic Elunes as it is for the legendary, meaning that the dimension slate isn't very cost effective for the epic Elunes, but doing it for the legendaries is definitely worth it. What they're saying here for this buff, which is very good for them to do, is going to be that they're matching those stats, meaning that it will be worth it to do some of those epic Elunes, as the bonuses that they get will be significant and will make those epic Elunes even stronger, and that power gap will not be as much if you do one over the other. So that's going to be a very good improvement to those, and will make the Dimension Slate worth it for epic Elunes, whereas before it really wasn't quite worth it. The seventh thing that they're doing here for this improvement is the minimum donation amount for alliances will be reduced to 2,500 gold, which is good for people that just want to do that, tick that off on their daily type thing, or for something that they're going for. It'll just be reduced so they don't have to spend so much gold on it, which is nice. Required air battle participation number for the weekly missions, which is currently 25. They're reducing it down to 15, making it a little bit easier to get that reward done, which I believe gives 100 of the badges that you get from it. So that's going to be nice, as you don't have to do it as many times. They're expanding the exploration missions to either 10 stages or adding 10 stages, which adding 10 stages would be quite a lot, but expanding it to 10 stages would also be a very nice thing, as you'll be able to do more of it to get more of those resources quicker. Fixing a few of the bugs, skill queue and air battle mock battle. I'm not sure of this bug. I can't say that I've seen it, but that's good that they're fixing it. Fixing an issue where Sirius froze the battle in device of certain language and location. Not sure what that one is either. The third one, which is something I'm very familiar with, and I'm very glad they're finally fixing it, is this one. Congram, whenever he did apply a Mark of Death, if he restrained a target and then to CC it and then applied a Mark of Death, it would remove the restrain off the target when it applies the Mark of Death, which made him very annoying if you were using him as a CC for some of the boss fights. Like, for example, if you were using him as a CC because you couldn't bring a DPS into the boss, so you bring him to restrain the bosses instead. For some of the dailies on the bosses. So if you brought him to restrain them instead, and then he applied the Mark of Death because he hit them 3 times, then that would remove the restrain off of them. That made it very annoying because then you had to try to CC them again after doing that. The same thing, it made it very annoying whenever you were doing that in PvP situations too. For example, if you used Congram to CC an enemy Elune, and then you applied the Mark of Death to them, it would take them out of that CC, that restrain, which was somewhat annoying to deal with. So fixing this issue to me makes Congram much better, just because it was a broken mechanic anyway. So fixing it is something that I'm very happy to see on this one, as it affects both PvE and PvE situations using Congram. So I'm very happy that they're finally fixing that. They're fixing the Watchers and the World Bosses so that they don't get tolerance against weaken effects. So that's gonna be very good, as that was a little silly to have right now, because the whole point is that you're supposed to be able to do those effects to build that up so you can get the bonus damage to the boss. Having them develop tolerance against it was a little bit of annoying. They fixed an issue with the debuff for Lightshore Necklace where it didn't work against weaken effects. That's good. Camera angle issue after a skill animation Alliance battle replay. Can't say I'm very familiar with that one. Fixed an issue with the die tutorial. I'm not too sure about that one, but that's good. Let's see. Fixed an issue where Rachel, with her passive 2, eliminates roll additional damage when she attacked with Kara's ultimate skill armor. I'm not too sure about that one. I can't say that I've really tested that one to see it, but if they're fixing it for the additional damage or whatever with the Kara's ultimate skill, then that's good that they're fixing that. Fix the Arch. This one is also something that I am familiar with and that I'm glad they're fixing. This one, Artemil didn't counter with his Judge passive depending on certain skills that were used. For example, Trent, which is a very common one, probably the most common one, whenever Trent used his ultimate skill, which removes all buffs off the battlefield except for soul effects. It removes any harmful or beneficial effects. So any positive buffs, enhanced buffs, or whatever, plus any type of weakening buffs or anything from your team, the enemy team, just everybody. It cleanses everybody. It cleanses everybody, and then it heals your team, and then does AoE damage to the enemy team. But this skill, it does AoE damage, but it never triggered Artemiral's passive, meaning that he could use it and do damage AoE to the team, and Artemiral, if he was on the other team, he wouldn't counter with anything. So that was kind of weird that he didn't do that. I know with the Lucia's skill 3, her ultimate skill, that also happened too. If he wasn't frozen, Artemiral wouldn't counter. Not quite sure with Karu, don't remember ever testing it with Karu, but with Trent I noticed it the most, especially in air battles. So it's going to be nice that they're fixing that, because now Artemiral will be countering on those too. So anything that does damage, basically now he will counter, which is going to be good. Next issue, they fixed Cookie's special skill to where it didn't properly activate if the PDEF and MDEF was identical, which I'm sure was pretty rare, because it seems like it would be pretty difficult to keep them identical all the time. But I'm guessing that if it didn't activate because of that, that could be annoying for you if you're using her. They fixed an issue with Inmei where the enemy banished by a special skill gained a turn for action. That was kind of weird, but they're fixing that, so that's good. So that means that using his banish skill will be nice to have. And then the other thing that they fixed it where the evasion rate became abnormally high if the stat became lower than a certain negative number, which they said does fix the abnormal damage from Michelle. It will be fixed with that, so that's going to be good, because that was one of the things that they needed to address, I think, for a balance, was Michelle's abnormal damage in world bosses, which I think was one of the recent things that they said that they were addressing, which is why they're giving everybody in the world boss the same reward, is because of this problem, and people took advantage of it. So because of that, everybody's getting the max reward in world boss. Yay! But fixing this is going to be nice, because it does do that. So now the evasion rate doesn't become super high. Instead, it's going to be a fixed thing, which is good. So it looks like the bug fixes that they're doing, some of them are going to be very impactful. The Judge passive on Artemiral, which is something that I'm very familiar with, that's going to be helpful, especially in air battles or PvP. The Mark of Death thing with the Restraint with Kongrim is going to be very helpful. So that's going to be nice. The World Boss one, not developing tolerance, is going to be something that's going to be very nice for everyone. Some of the other ones are more specific or very situational, but others are just happen all the time and very noticeable, so those are going to be good. Overall, the improvements and bug fixes that they're doing to this on this patch looks like it's going to be pretty good, and some of the other things that they're going to be adding look like they're going to be pretty nice. So this will be a nice patch to see. We'll kind of go over more of this stuff later when it comes out. We'll go over some of these things in more detail then. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.